Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth. Today we are going to take a little bit of time and reboot my therapy journal system. So let's go ahead and get started. If you've been around for a little while, you probably know that this is my therapy journal. I set this up last fall as I was just beginning therapy, dipping my toe back into the water of talk therapy, and it's worked for me, but there's things that I need to change and update, so we're actually not going to finish out this journal, which I feel a little bit bad about because I do love this Midnight Moth journal from Archer and Olive, but I've got a very definitive therapy plan now and just want a fresh start. I changed therapists, I started a whole new system, and I just want a fresh start. So that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to retire this one. And then in my December sub box Archer and Olive haul, I flat out said that if I finished out my therapy journal, I would probably use these two journals that came in that sub box for my therapy system. This one being the one where I keep more clinical information. This one being the one that I use as a free form journal, specifically to unpack those things that are talked about in therapy, because it is a lined journal. So lots of lines. Lines are a little wide for me, but we're going to use it anyway. I'm not going to do anything with this one right now. I'm not going to put any stickers in it. I'm not going to do any designing. Like, it's really just for free flow journaling. I might put a nameplate in the front at some point, but for now, we're going to tuck this one off to the side and just know that this is the one that I'm going to start free flow journaling in. And that leaves us this cute little coffee journal. You know, I would never have bought this for myself. It just has too much going on, but I think it's going to be a great alternative for my therapy journal. Definitely going to use it. I have some washi tapes off here to the side that are sort of a vintagey that I might use. I also have this rose and gray Archer and Olive pen, so I'm going to use these as well. I think these both came in the December sub box, but I'm losing track of which gel pens came in which box. And we're gonna go ahead and get this set up. The other thing that I have done is create myself some printables, and they're not as elaborate as the butterflies or the moss that I used in the last one. I also created myself some headers, so we're gonna use these as well. And this shouldn't take too long. So I'm presenting straight to camera, doing another one of these sort of chatty videos where I don't do a voiceover, that I am just on camera as we go, and let's see how this turns out. Gonna go ahead and open this up. I will put my name here. For now, I am just gonna put this quote, which is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite actors who we now miss, which is Carrie Fisher. And she said, "Bipolar disorder can be a great teacher. It's a challenge, but it can set you up to be able to do almost anything else in your life." And it's always been one of my favorite quotes. I designed these on Canva. You guys know I talk about Canva a lot. We are gonna stick it in there. It might end in there straight. It might not end up in there straight. It's gonna be fine. You know, we're tossing perfectionism out the window this year. We are just going with, that looks great, and we're gonna go with it. So kind of try to line it up and then just put that down. Just as a reminder that bipolar disorder certainly is not a death sentence, y'all. Obviously, I've lived with it, known that I had it since I was 21, and I'm pushing 50. So, you know, it's been a rough few years. It's been a rough few years for me. It's been a rough few years for a whole lot of people for a whole lot of different reasons, and things have just been a little rocky. I think y'all know that if you have been around for a little bit, with my job changes and the pandemic and everything else that has been going on. But we'll stick my name in here later. I always botch my name when I write it on camera, which is hysterical. I am just gonna go ahead and use this little page. You know, I normally glue these two together, but I'm just gonna go ahead and put this quick little calendar at a glance on here. Again, Canva. We're just gonna use that. And why am I changing journals now if I haven't filled up the other one? Well, when I started therapy again, I just kind of picked a person, picked a day, and was like, I'm gonna go back to therapy, because it has been an extraordinarily long amount of time since I had talk therapy. That decision was a good one. I don't regret it at all. In fact, the therapist that I was talking with kind of led me in some directions that made me realize, and I think I've mentioned this before, that I needed to really address not just my emotions or whatnot in talk therapy, but that I needed to start having some conversations about my bipolar disorder, how long it's been since I was diagnosed. I needed to find a new psychiatrist, all of those sorts of things. It was the right decision for me. Maybe the wrong therapist, and there was nothing wrong with him as a therapist by any stretch of the imagination. But in order to have that more inclusive working with a therapist who is also in the same practice with the psychiatrist, and they're working together and talking to one another, and they can both see my notes, and also bringing in sort of just not just the talk therapy, but the full-blown medical reevaluation of my bipolar disorder. And when I started that, it took a little time to not necessarily get in the door, but my therapist in particular did not have a lot of openings. And so I met with someone within the practice who sort of did my intake and my history, and when was I diagnosed, where was I diagnosed, what doctor did my diagnosis, all of those sorts of things. I had a lot of questions, I think, because I have had a lot of friends who may have had a pseudo diagnosis of bipolar and it ended up being something else, and I thought, well, I'm pretty sure I'm bipolar, but let's go ahead and maybe check this out and see if there's anything else to this. And so that is what I decided to do. That led me down a really great path. We're talking about changing medications, which I haven't done in years and years and years, which is terrifying to me, but I think it might be a good thing. And then I also sort of just kind of had to wait to get in to talk to my therapist on a regular basis. So I had, if you ever feel like you need to be evaluated for some kind of mental illness, in the practice that I went to, there was a person who I met with for 3 visits who did a full history, did a whole lot of education on bipolar disorder. She asked if I wanted to have sort of that education piece because I've lived with this for so long and I'm fairly educated about my disorder, and I said, well, yeah, let's go ahead. And then I met with my psychiatrist, who I meet with every 2 months, and then I had 1 visit in December with the woman that will be my therapist, or who is now my therapist, and we had a great visit. We gelled really well. I could tell that she was going to work for me. And then I kind of had to wait. I had to wait until the beginning of March to be able to set up regular appointments because therapists are overworked right now. That's where I'm at. Through that process, those visits with everyone involved in my care, I came up with a different plan for this journal. It is part therapy journal, or mostly therapy journal, I should say, and it is part emergency plan. So there's a page in here for warning signs for mania, warning signs for depression. Who should my family call if they see that one of these things is happening, that sort of thing. So there's more in here than what I set up in the journal that I set up in the fall. But it was a great dry run. You don't necessarily get everything right the first time. It served its purpose. I took notes in it. I, made notes, but I have a much clearer direction from this team than I had from that one therapist that I was seeing. We are going to go ahead. This is just an About Me page. Again, this is going to be something that family can reference. Like I can direct my son Kenny or my other son Kyle, who you guys don't hear a whole lot about because he lives out of town. He's actually here with me right now, but either one of those boys could use this as a reference if they needed to for various things. Not that we haven't sat down and talked about some of these things, especially now. They've had a mother who lives with bipolar disorder their entire lives. Most of that time, I was a single parent. I work very hard to keep it managed. That doesn't necessarily mean their childhoods were the easiest. I'm not quite sure when I clued them in full on. I think I waited until they were older to do that sort of thing. I've never been fired from a job because of my medical condition. I have once taken FMLA, which is family medical leave here in the States. One of the benefits we are entitled to, and that was, I was about a year and a half after my dad had passed away 9 years ago. I was so deep in a depression, and it took me a really, really, really long time to realize how bad I was. So they have lived with mom, and they know mom has mental illness, and they know mom has bouts of depression. Right now, what we have discovered going through this process of checking out my medical history is that this medical team I'm working with now, has determined that my mania is essentially in remission. That I have done such a good job of controlling my mania over the last few years. Been a full 10 years since I have had a full-blown manic phase, and I don't know how many years it has to be gone for them to consider it in remission, but it is one of those things that I have done a very good job in my health and wellness of at least holding what is sometimes the scariest part of bipolar disorder at bay. I have managed to do that anyway, and I do that with diet and exercise. I do that by mindfulness. I do that with knowing what my triggers are. The last manic phase that I had, I was attending a music festival. I drank more than I normally do. I mean, I had a good time, sure, but I then continued to act like a person that was under the influence long after I had stopped drinking. And so letting my guard down and drinking more alcohol than I would normally have consumed in a given day had loosened up my brain, so to speak, to the point where it triggered a manic phase almost instantaneously. I have never liked the feeling of being out of control. So I was never a heavy drinker, even in college. I mean, I went to a party and stuff every now and then, did some drinking, but I definitively hated the feeling of being out of control. I guess that's one of those things that's always kind of been in my mind, is if I let myself, and sometimes I can't control it, but if I let myself get into a stage of mania, then I am wildly out of control. And that's just not a feeling that I enjoy. For me personally, it is very much an out-of-body experience. I don't really know how to explain it more than that, other than I can see myself doing stupid shit, so to speak, but I can't stop myself. I mean, it's literally like hovering over your body, like you see in cheesy movies and stuff, but far more severe, because it affects everything after that. Those of us who live with bipolar disorder, we have to get very good at living with the consequences of our actions. And a lot of times those actions we can't remember. And I'm sure that is very frustrating for family members and friends. I have lost friends because sometimes I tend to just check out. And therefore I'm not feeding those friendships. I'm not giving those friendships the attention that they need. Okay, so this About Me page is really just I'm going to put in my full name, date of birth, insurance information, medical conditions. So other than my bipolar disorder, I don't necessarily have any medical conditions other than those that have now come on due to the medications and things that I'm taking for my bipolar disorder. So those are comorbidity issues. One of those is weight gain, which has led to higher cholesterol, which has led to higher blood pressure, being borderline diabetic. So, you know, this thing that affects me mentally is now affecting me physically. The older I've gotten, the stronger those things have come on. We're also developing a plan for me to try to bring down my weight. So most antipsychotics, like the one that I've been on for many years, can actually cause weight gain. And so that's one of the reasons we're thinking about changing my medications. If I have any hope of dropping any weight, I'm going to need to change my medication. And that just, you know, coming off a medication that's working, that keeps, you know, my moods stabilized, is a scary thing. Sometimes you swing one way or you swing the other, and that's trial and error. I might have to take some time off work. It's just a whole thing. But again, for the sake of the rest of my health, it's something that I probably have to do. And then here I just want to write out some of my history, but that's what I'm going to do in that spot there. All right, turning over. One of the things that my therapist asked me to do was to come up with a list of what my core values are. Now, if you watched my Notion tour, you'll know I was already 99% of the way there. So that timed out great. We have gone over those. We have talked about those. May need to add to them. I think I'm going to try to... I felt like that header looked a little lost on the other page. So here on the left, I'm going to do my core values. Here on the right is going to be a list of my core circle. Individuals in my life that are aware of my illness, who could possibly be a voice of reason if I just needed someone to talk to, who could drive me to the doctor if necessary. Anybody who's an advocate for your mental health and your physical health too. And that's not always family. In my case, I can put my boys on here. I do have family that live out of state. That is a touchy conversation, not because they live out of state, but because my father, who passed away 9 years ago, I feel was the only person in my immediate family to study and try to understand my illness. I'm trying not to be blameful, but I struggle with the fact that the rest of my family seems to still be living with preconceived notions of mental illness. A lot of the world does. I've reached a point where we're struggling and things are tense. These are my 5 core values, and then each one of them aligns to a specific domain within my life. So creativity aligns with career and creativity. Authenticity aligns with my relationships. Adventure is soul and senses, or leisure. I like soul and senses better. Stability, home and hearth, and balance, health and wellness. Like I told my therapist, I've done a great job over the years in maintaining that balance in my mental health, not so much in my physical health. And then, this is just gonna literally be a list of names. This is not gonna be a long list to start off with, I can tell you that. My core circle is very small. We could very well add names to this. I could very well take names off of this. It's one of those situations. And then here underneath each one of these core values, I'm just going to write a little blurb about what that means to me, and what that value stands for, why I chose it. We'll go ahead and stick a little bit of washi tape in this bare spot here. This one that's got the pink on it came with the Archer and Olive sub box. These others all came in a singular set of vintage stuff. It does have a lot of coffee iconography on it, which is why I picked it. It's got some other stuff too, but these are the ones that are slightly sepia toned. I don't know if you can see this. They're not exactly black, so they're more kind of the colors that go along with this journal. I have them, I might as well use them. I think y'all have seen that I don't use washi tape a whole lot. It's a good opportunity for me to get it out and just have a little something on the page. I thought about not decorating this one at all, and then I was like, it's your therapy journal. You're really gonna want that to have some personality because otherwise it could just be really a drudgery to use, right? It's one of the reasons we make our journals pretty, is so that we can be encouraged to use them. So there is core values and core circle. This is going to be the page for my Mania plan. I'm still thinking about a lot of this. This is one of those things that was given the homework to do, was to look at these things, review my triggers, try to come up with what are the things that family and friends can do to try to help me be safe and keep my mental health a priority. And I still don't have all the answers to that, because and I hate to say it this way, but it's because I've been doing it on my own for so long, which is one of those things that took me so long to decide that it was time to go back to therapy, because I'm like, well, I've been doing it. I'm fine. I can make this work. I don't need any help. It's one of those things that actually fascinates my psychiatrist, because I've been doing it by myself for so long. Anyway, I had to let Fairmere in, y'all. I had the door closed because the boys are out there making a whole lot of noise, and Fairmere decided to make more noise. So yeah, so my therapist has been intrigued by how I've managed. I mean, I've had a primary care physician. Obviously, I've had somebody who's prescribed me my medications, and sometimes that's not gone well. I mean, there have been times where we've had to change medications, and I've ended up in a really bad place one way or the other. There was one period of time, probably 12 years ago, somewhere there, where my primary care physician even said, we're gonna try one more thing, and if this doesn't work, you're gonna have to go back to a psychiatrist. But that one more thing managed to shake out in the end, right? So I didn't at the time. And a lot of the other reason that's kept me from pursuing a more holistic care regimen is money. When I got divorced, I was making $9 an hour, 2 kids. Somewhere in there, I decided to go back to school and get my degree so that I could change that situation. I didn't have the resources, and so many people don't have the resources for that. It's one of those things that I wish that mental health resources were really, truly there for everybody in this country, in the US, because they're not. I now am in a situation where I'm making more money. I work for an organization that has really good mental health benefits, and all of those things have to align. Or, it was things like, do I go to therapy or do I feed my kids? And there's so many people in the world that obviously you're going to choose your kids. And it didn't matter how much you crunched the numbers. I was driving used cars that were hand-me-downs at the time. I didn't buy anything new. Yeah, that was just that was the socioeconomic status that I fell into. I also didn't ask for help a lot, even with my parents. I mean, it was only in very rare instances that I even wanted to ask for help. And they're your parents. And again, they know you live with mental illness. But as I stated, pretty positive, only one of my parents really grasped and understood what that meant. I love my mom. She's still alive. She lives with my brother. I do not think that, my mother understands my mental illness. Should I be the one, after all these years, to educate her? Or is she set in her ways? I don't know the answer to that either. It's a conundrum. It really is. It's one of those things that you just have to figure out how to address. If you have a child who lives with bipolar disorder, what do you do for them? How do you help them from afar? Especially when, like I said, I've been managing this on my own for years and years and years. So to my mother, it may just seem like I've got this managed and that it's always okay. And it's never always okay, as much as I want it to be. Yes, I keep things as under control as I can. The wheels can fall off the bus at any moment. Absolutely any moment. This Mania plan is based off of one that came in a workbook that was handed to me by my treatment team. Warning signs of mania. For me, that could be, like I said before, the last clear manic phase I had was triggered by alcohol. So it could be that I'm acting like I'm intoxicated and I am not. Other signs of mania could be delusions of grandeur. I've never really had those because mania manifests in each person so wildly differently. I need to come in and really flesh out what that looked like for me. And then how can people keep me safe during a manic phase? This can be something as simple as literally changing my Amazon password so I don't spend any money, because that's a very clear indication of mania, is when you start sort of spending wildly out of control. What to say or do, a lot of people just don't know. What do I say to you when you're in this kind of phase? Can I say, let's go call your doctor? Those sorts of things. Resources, and this is resources for me, resources for anybody in my core circle. And then I'm just going to go ahead and write down, because I only have 5, maybe 6 definitive manic phases throughout my entire history. I'm going to jot those down so that I can kind of always have that timeline with me, because I just have never really written it down anywhere. Like in my head, I know when they took place, but I've never really written it down. So if I have a mania plan, then I also need a depression plan. And this is the one where I spend, I think, most of my time. I don't want to say that I'm always depressed, but I definitely have a more melancholic persuasion than I do a manic one. So the goal with bipolar disorder is to find the median, right? You don't want to be too manic. You don't want to be too depressed. You find the middle, find the median. Where is your normal? And my normal is about here. I'm never at a point where I feel like I'm not mildly depressed. And I don't know why that is. Maybe we'll figure it out. I mean, and this is after years of taking medications, but again, not having talk therapy. Maybe in the course of my talk therapy, we can find a way to get me to here instead of here. I think a lot of that has to do with things like just general contentment. Bipolar disorder kind of derails your life. It derailed my life at the age of 20. It derailed my life to the point where I became a mother probably before I was ready to become a mother, and I had to drop out of school because of it. You should see my transcript from my early years of university. I mean, it just goes like this. If there was any clear indicator, it was my college transcript, because it was it was a roller coaster. And interesting things that we're exploring, because growing up, as I've mentioned before, in Kenya, I grew up on the equator. And so the sun came up at 7 and it went down at 7 every single day. There was none of this living in the northern hemisphere with long winters, or living in the far southern hemisphere, which, just flip-flop the other direction. Your winters are just at a different time of year. It literally 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness. So that was one of those things that was such a stable thing in my life that we've postulated with me and my psychiatrist about just how that assisted keeping my bipolar disorder from manifesting at a younger age. One of the other very interesting tidbits, as we've considered changing my medications to the good old tried and true lithium, lithium kind of gets a bad rap and a stigma, but researching it, the Greeks were treating mood disorders with lithium thousands of years ago. It's a mineral, so it comes from the earth, and I lived in a part of the world that was incredibly mineral rich, and there are other areas of the world that have such a level of things like lithium or other minerals in the water that are naturally acting as mood stabilizers for entire cultures and entire populations. And we can't prove, without doing a test on the water that I was drinking when I grew up, but there's a very good chance, because if you look at a lithium map, there's a lot of lithium in Asia, kind of comes into the Middle East. It does come down sort of the east coast of Africa, but there were so many other minerals and stuff in the water that we were drinking that are different from here in the US, because here in the US we strip everything out of the water and then we add things back in, like fluoride. It's another one of those things that could have been moderating my moods just through my drinking water. So the sun coming up at 7 and going down at 7, and then possibly the minerals in the water. And then I graduated from high school and I came back to the state. Almost instantaneously, my life became a roller coaster. And of course, a lot of people in the beginning pawned that off on, oh, she's just sowing her wild oats, or that sort of ridiculous commentary when we don't want to face something. And then it wasn't until I got pregnant, and then I got married, and I had a baby, and what I thought was postpartum depression, I finally sought out help. And that's when my parents jumped in to help get me where I needed to go to get a diagnosis, get some treatment. They had, through the course of my collegiate years and some behaviors, they were not witnessing those behaviors firsthand. They were still in Africa and I was here, but they began to realize that I was not behaving in a manner consistent with the woman they had raised. So they did help me out, sent me to another city where they had sort of already picked out a treatment team. They were just waiting for me to say that I had a problem. And that's how I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So to that end, if you find yourself struggling with postpartum, ask for help. I mean, I know we still have a lot of stigma around all things mental health. Like I said, what I thought was postpartum depression. I mean, and it was depression, and it did happen postpartum, but it was definitively more dangerous. Depression is one of those things that manifests differently in every person. Have I been suicidal? Absolutely. Have I thought about harming other people? Absolutely. I mean, it is not a pretty disease to have, and which is why I work so hard to keep it under control. And I really thought about whether I was going to talk about this quite this much, but you know what? Somebody's got to talk about it. That's how I feel about it. I've always been open about it from the moment I was diagnosed. I've never tried to hide it from people, including employers. Now, I've been very lucky in that regard. I think I had one employer who kind of tried to dismiss it because she felt I was too high functioning to be someone with bipolar disorder. So here's the depression plan. So warning signs, personal coping methods. This one's important because I can hide depression for months and months and months until it gets to the point of thinking about suicide or hurting myself, that sort of thing. People and settings to lift me up. So who can I call to go get a cup of coffee? Where can I go? Like for me, sometimes I don't even necessarily need to be with a friend. I can go someplace like a coffee shop and take my laptop or a book and sit and just be around people. And that is a mood lift for me because I am such an extrovert. So that's that sort of thing. My reason for living, you know, a great thing to write down. And then who can I ask for help? Names and phone numbers. Again, creating a safe environment if I start falling into a depression. So the same antipsychotics that I take or the mood stabilizers that I take could also kill me, right? If I decided to take them en masse. So this could be like dosing of my medication for me. And while I'm such an independent individual, I would absolutely loathe the idea of somebody being like, here you go, please take your pills now. It's one of those things that were my depression to get to a point where it was unsafe for me to manage my own medications. Maybe somebody would have to do that for me. So anything else I can think of that would create a safer environment for me in that particular instance. And then just a little bit of depression history. I didn't leave as much space here as I did for the manic one, again, because of the fact that I pretty much always hover below the normal line. I'm always hovering towards being more depressed than regulated or even manic. All right, we are going to switch over to a page that's got information about my medical team. Okay, this on the left is going to be just where I can write down my medical team information, and this on the right is going to be a medication log. One of the things that I have not done a great job of is, as I've moved around the country over the years and changed doctors, it has been taking that medication history with me. I can't remember everything that I've been on, which is, it's not detrimental, but it is difficult when you change doctors and then you're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and you can't necessarily remember. I remember the things that I had adverse reactions to. What I have been on for many, many years actually has a sedative in it to help sort of shut up the brain at night, and it kind of wore off at one point, and we needed to look at an alternative. And so the doctor put me on something that didn't have the sedative in it, but then they put me on Ambien to help me sleep. And I hallucinated on Ambien. So I've never hallucinated in a manic phase, at least I don't think I have. It is one of the symptoms of mania is hallucinations and paranoia. I did hallucinate. I remember it very vividly on Ambien. It's just not the greatest thing. So I do remember those medications that I have not responded well to, or, you know, had some sort of reaction to, or had a side effect. A few years ago, switched me to Vraylar, and it was managing my moods fine, but it made me so heat sensitive. I mean, if I took a shower, I would break out in a sweat, or I would just, I was a miserable human being. It's got to be, well, it's very similar. I'm going to just say this right now to what, to what hot flashes and, you know, menopause or perimenopause are like. I'm also going through some of those things. So, okay, so on this medication log, we're going to list the medication, we're going to list the dosage. We're going to put a play button here for start date and a little anti-smoking, you know, circle with a cross through it for stop date. So that I can start tracking that. I also have something similar to this in Notion, again, which is where I keep my long-term collections. And I will move some of that information over there if this gets full. It shouldn't get full. I just am anticipating the fact that my doctor wants to do a medication change and what's that going to look like. And then hopefully, if we can get some other lifestyle things worked out, I can also come off of the medications that I've had to start taking for these comorbidity issues. That is the goal. Over here, I'm going to write down the name, address, phone number for my psychiatrist, my therapist, my primary care physician, the main hospital that I prefer to use. And then here I'm going to put emergency numbers for, you know, the suicide hotline or the ER. And then here will be my medication log. And other than that, we're going to keep this page very, very simple. I'm not going to stick any washi tape on it, and we're going to move on to the next one. This is not, I'm calling it my therapy plan, but it is really just a 5-topic list of the things that my therapist has identified are things that we need to work on. They include things like grief, which I've been very open about, that my dad died 9 years ago. But because he was not only just my father, but also my main mental health advocate, for a number of reasons I've really never, I'm beginning to realize, dealt with my father's passing. Yeah, and again, a lot of that had to do with holding it all together. Like I said, I had gone back to school as an adult. It was my personal goal, having had my life derailed by bipolar disorder when I was younger and not finishing school. I had the goal to get my degree before I turned 40. I was in school, and I was right at the end of school when my dad got sick, and I had some wonderful professors who had a lot of patience with me. I had to gather up all of my schoolwork to go be with my dad as he died. I had to finish my senior capstone project. I had all my research materials with me. My father passed away. We went through all the funeral arrangements and had this really beautiful celebration of life for him. And then I locked myself in a room and wrote this massive paper that I had to write in order to graduate. And I personally have decided that when I was in that room, I locked everything away. I came out of there ready to graduate and having had written my paper, but I had not dealt with my father's passing. So I'm talking about that with my therapist, and she's like, well, you're probably not wrong. Yeah, we have to deal with these things. So grief is one of these things. Body acceptance and positivity is one of these things, because again, I am a big girl. I used to not be. I used to be very athletic, but this illness and how I chose to cope with it over the years and the medications that I've been on and a number of different issues all live in that body positivity situation. What else is on there? There's some other things on there. I've got them all written on a note on my phone. Got to get them out of my phone and on here so that I can actually not just have that title, but start expounding on those things. So we're calling this my therapy plan page, but it's really just, these are the 5 things we're working on. How long is that going to take? I don't have a clue. Are other things probably going to come up? Maybe, but for now, we're focusing on those 5 key areas. All right, we are close to done. So the first thing that my therapist said she wanted me to do was to research ACT therapy. I did look it up. I do have this little chart that I just kind of, I dropped it into Canva and made the colors match so that I could put it in my journal and make it, cohesive. You don't have to do that. You can find an ACT chart. There's lots of them in lots of different ways. This is the one that I felt had the most information on it on ACT therapy. We're just gonna drop this in here. Maybe stick some washi tape on it. Y'all, I have been going through the sticker paper, and I say sticker paper, it is literally just full sheet matte label paper, and I will try to link it down below for you. The other thing that I have, and I had this in my last journal, and I really tried to make them the same size. This is the Wheel of Emotions, because I'm not good with emotions. Again, it all comes down to having it all together. That stiff upper lip, not showing anybody anything that's ever wrong. I might have a mental illness, but I'm gonna raise my kids, damn it. Whatever you want to call it. I lock a lot of my emotions away. I didn't used to. I don't think. You know what a lot of it is. I'll be honest. Let's talk about it for a minute. So when you are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a lot of people around you then treat you like you're not allowed to have normal emotions. On a day where something bad happens and you're just sad, like, oh my God, are you depressed? Do you need to go see the doctor? Or on a day that, for me, if I pull off a really great event and I'm just riding that high, like natural happiness high of having done a good job on a thing, then my emotions get questioned. My emotions get questioned on just about everything. And the answer to that is to just lock them up. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. I think this one's lower than that one. It's fine. It's a-okay. One of the coping mechanisms that I have is to stop being emotional about anything, because my emotions are always in question by those around me. And so I tend to be just very stoic, and it's not always healthy. It's not healthy at all. Y'all know Kenny. He's been here on my channel, my son. Kenny's very emotional, you know, and sometimes we end up at, I'm not going to say at odds with one another. We've gotten very good about if he just needs to, he knows I'm a fixer too. It's another thing, you know, about being a control freak. Fixer. He knows that I'm always going to want to try to fix something, and sometimes he just needs to talk about something. He just needs to vent, and he'll have to say to me, he'll have to be like, Mom, stop trying to fix it. I just need you to shut up and listen. But I struggle with when he gets really emotional about things. I'm like, oh no, we're talking about emotions. So I'm thinking I'm going to introduce some gray washi tape or something so that I have something different to break up some of this washi tape. I don't know. That's not going to make it into this video, but I might add another element. But there we go. So there's just my little chart on ACT therapy, and then my emotion wheel. And an emotion wheel, if you don't know, we tend to categorize emotions into very broad categories. So like, I am afraid, and this little section here is afraid. And what that does is it breaks it down and says words that also fall into afraid are scared, anxious, insecure, submissive, rejected, humiliated. And then it branches out even farther. I'm going to trace over these dividing lines to make them stand out a little bit more. So afraid breaks down into these, which then further breaks down into terrified, frightened, overwhelmed, worried, inadequate, yada yada. Your main emotions are afraid, angry, disgusted, sad, happy, and surprised, and then they branch out from there to help you kind of just identify what emotion you're actually feeling. And when you're somebody like me who likes to repress those, this can be super helpful. We are almost done. We got 2 more to go. This is going to be my session log, and this is exactly how I set this up in the last journal, and it is just for me to keep track of therapy sessions I've had. And not just therapy sessions, I'm also going to include, like I said, I am meeting with my psychiatrist every 2 months, so I will put those on here as well, because I do meet with him for a rather lengthy period of time, and we'll need to just kind of, you know, record any notes that come out of that, like our historical discussion of lithium. He had to educate me on it, and I think I had some of the same reservations or preconceived notions about it that a lot of people do. And you know, his comment was that you don't hear anything about it because it's a mineral, it doesn't have to recoup any research and development costs, right? It's natural. We've been using it for years. Now, what has changed in the time that I was diagnosed till now is that they literally can just give me a blood test to determine how much to give me. They don't have to guess on the dosage, which I need to talk to him about more in my next visit before I pull the trigger and actually make this decision. I'm leaning towards it for a lot of reasons. You know, mainly, like I said, I need to lose weight. Pretty much nothing I do does my body respond well enough, because the medication I'm taking actually doesn't necessarily make me hungry. It actually has medical research now to prove that it causes weight gain in and of itself. I mean, it's an answer, right? 10 years ago, I could have told you this medication was causing me to gain weight, but we didn't have, oh, look at that. Oh well, we didn't have the medical research to back it. And I'm sure there were many, many people like me on this medication going, yeah, could somebody do a medical study on this, please? Now they have. We have been proven right. The medical community, I'm not going to worry about these smudges, y'all. I mean, it's because this is a gel pen. Even doctors would say, we know this is causing you to gain weight, but we don't have nobody's done a study yet. And until somebody does a study and there is some sort of publication with all of the right data to prove it, doctors can talk about it all they want, but when it comes to then treating those comorbidity issues that come along with it, they can't do anything about it until the insurance companies jump on board. In our lovely American healthcare system, the insurance companies have to jump on board in order for you to be able to justify and treat some of those comorbidity issues. It's all just really peachy keen, let me tell you. Alright, so yeah, this smudged a little bit, but this is 2 pages, so I can do session logs here, and this is just for me to put a session number, so I'm going to backtrack and stick in, I really only have 2 or 3 I need to stick in here. The date, the time, who I saw. I might even log my primary care physician visits in this as well. And then all I have left is another little quote from Matt Haig that says, there is no normal, Normal is subjective. There are 7 billion versions of normal on this planet. And then to go with that, I'm just gonna have this thing that says session notes, and then back here, and we'll just give you a peek. Look, I've already had a session. I've already got notes in here. So like I said, I had to get this set up and get to moving. So I think I'm gonna run this coffee washi pretty much all the way down this page because it's cute. And again, that stripey one. Farmer's yelling at me. He wants me to be done. So that he can get in my lap, I'm sure. Because he can't really get in my lap when I'm at my desk. He has a bed right next to my desk. But like it's up on top of a cart at the same level as my desk so that he can be with me. He's that codependent. I know he's been on camera lately and Awen has not. So Faramir does have another half. He has an Awen. So those of you who've seen Faramir, oh, what did he just do? Did y'all hear that? He's a tuxedo cat. He's black and white, very handsome. He knows he's very handsome. And then Awen is like a tawny tabby cat. She's got beautiful stripes, but she's very much one of those, oh, it's you kind of cats. If she jumps up on my desk, but she doesn't do it when I'm here. She will get in my lap if I'm on the couch or in a comfortable chair. She'll sleep in bed with me, as does he. But day to day, like, she doesn't interrupt my day. He is like a dog. He is underfoot, wants his mama all of the time. Absolutely all of the time. So, all right, he's very codependent. And he only got worse at the beginning of the pandemic when I was furloughed for 6 months and I was home for 6 months. Like I literally had everything delivered. I didn't go anywhere. I just kind of hung out here. Or at least for the first 6 weeks. The very first 6 weeks were just me at home, had my prescriptions come to me, had my food come to me, all of that sort of thing. And then I started making one weekly trip out to do things, but I didn't go out other than that. So one time a week I would go out. And I was with him all the time and he became very, very codependent and he's yelling at me because he really wants me to stop. So we're gonna flip back to look at this really quickly. So I did stick this quote in here. I will look, let's just get brave. I'm gonna print it. I'm not even gonna be there. And here my last one there. Obviously I'm not gonna put my phone number in here while you guys can see it. All right, and then I just put in a year at a glance just to fill this page. The About Me page, core values, core circle, my Mania plan, my depression plan, my information for my medical team, my medication log, therapy plan, those 5 things that I'm going to be working on with my therapist, the ACT therapy, the emotion wheel, my session log. And I put the session log here right before I would start taking sessions. And that is it now. I know I talked a lot about my mental health in this video. If you guys have any questions, and I am not out to be anybody's mentor, but my email address is on my YouTube profile. Feel free to email me if you have any questions about mental health or my bipolar journey. I'm happy to answer those as best as I can. I don't check that email every single day. I'm not running Dots and Beyond like it's a full-on business yet, but I will answer you. If you want to reach out, you're welcome to do that. If you have any other ideas that I could drop into a future therapy journal, drop those down in the comments below, because I'm pretty sure this time I'm gonna fill this one pretty quickly. I will be meeting with my therapist right now bi-weekly. We have got those set up at least halfway through the year. If you liked this video, I know it was very chatty. My last couple have been very chatty, but if you liked this video, if you found any value in it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one.